Okay, looks like it is 12 o'clock. So I'm going to go ahead and start streaming here. Nothing really big, just some live production on my Quest of Quien module. And right off the bat, I like to do my disclaimers. This is off the cuff, so I may be, a little rambly, maybe all over the place. So forgive me for that, as usual. Next thing, I am, I guess, technically on a lunch break, but this is my occupation during the day. So I might get some messages that I have to handle from work. If so, obviously they take priority. And with that, let's get started. So as you can see here, we are looking at kind of a weird outline and a close-up of for any of you who remember the game back in the day, Street Smart, the character named Karate Man. That is because I am using him as a rotoscoping module for Valis Yawn's back handspring in Quests of Quien. So I've got these frames thus far, the startup and hopping back, the catch, the land, but unfortunately I'm still having to rely on Karate Man to fill in the final two, and I will probably add another transition frame in between those. And then of course I do have the landing. You can see the tabard and the cape are flying up there, and then I don't have any transition frames, but that is because in the finished animation it actually seeks into the jump frames that already exist. So if we scoot up here a little bit, you can see how that works. It transitions from here, then it goes into the jump frame where the tabard and cape are starting to flow back down, and then from there it can transition back to the idle. So that does two things. One is it saves me some time, and another, it actually does some of the leg transition from his legs being extremely close together to starting to spread back out, so that they will more closely match his idle animation. Anyway, let's seek back to the backdash and get started on some of the drawing. Now I've already done the basic outline of his body, so if we move Karate Man, you can see, well, there you go. What I generally do when I start a sprite is I just hand draw this thick black outline, then I go back through and make sure that it's only 1 pixel deep, so just kind of do some trimming and cleanup there, and that gives me the body and the skirt of his armor, or the Byrene, as I believe it's pronounced. Next thing we do is I want some backing for the armor, so what I do is I go over to the Byrene color and I just paint in there, and then I will break it out into another layer. So we're going to grab that, select a color range. Oops, not a focus area. Whatever you do, don't ever try to pick focused area in Photoshop. I have always found that it tries to crash the application. No matter which version of Photoshop I've had, no matter what platform I'm on, so I just never use it. Color range is what I was after, so we'll select that gray and we will cut it, and then we'll paste it right back into place as a layer, and I just call it a name of shade. Then excuse me, the next thing I want to do is to paste the actual texture of the armor, and to save time I've got a file here I call Valis Pieces, and that's just stuff that I've collected over time. So I grab the armor links and I paste it over top of the armor. Then I can move it underneath shade or whatever I need to do, but more importantly right now I'm going to select color range, that shade again, and then I invert my selection. Let me see what that message was real quick. Oh, that was actually a that was a happy birthday from my cousin. Yeah, it's my birthday today. Yay for me. Anyway, let's see. What was I doing? Oh, inverse the selection. and then there we go. That deletes all the armor links, and then I'll put it back on top of the shade, and there we go. And there is our armor. So that saves quite a lot of time. The next step that I will want to do is to draw in the belt. So we'll grab some deep green here, and generally I want it 3 to 4 pixels thick. So just kind of rough it along that area. And then I realized that I drew it onto the armor links instead of the body. So that wasn't very smart. So let's fix that. Okay. And we'll try again. Now, normally I'd like to put a little bit of curvature in there, but because of the limited number of pixels you can see when I do, it doesn't really work. It just makes the curve too severe. So we're just going to stick a straight diagonal in there. Now I want to put in the buckles. Oh, thank you, sir. I appreciate that. Let's see. And I'm going to leave the buckle like that for, actually, let's see. There we go. I'm going to leave the buckle like that for now until I've started to fill in some of the tabard, because I'll know how I really want the shading afterwards. All right. And let's get a little bit of texture for our belt. Nothing too extreme. Just enough to give it a little bit of depth. And speaking of, I have a call that I have to answer, so give me just a moment. Okay, sorry about that. Like I said, I am on the clock, so when the phone rings, it has to take priority. You know, work before play and all that. Excuse me. Anyway, let's see. What was I at? Oh, I was texturizing the belt. And the next thing I want to do is I think I want to add the arms. So I've already got a piece stored that I think will do nicely. It was meant for reaching up, but rotated back around, I think it'll do very well for landing that back handspring. Now, which one was it? Oh, number 1. Okay. Well, let's grab that and let's see, get in here, see what it does. We'll move the Karate Man up on top. Yeah, that's roughly what I'm after. So let's scoot that up just a little bit. Arm, and that is his right arm. I used to name the limbs. I would name them like leg near, leg far, arm near, arm far. Don't know why I did that when it just made more sense to name them right and left, because obviously that's the limbs don't change, and so that keeps the orientation more uniform. And now that I have his arm, though, I need to add some of the armor over it. So let's see. Just in case I screw up, let's make that another layer. New layer. Arm. Right. Armor. And we're going to round that off just a little bit. And I'm just going to go ahead and put in the texture by chain, or by hand, I mean. By the time I did a copy paste from my pieces, I could have already just drawn it in. And now let's give it a little bit of shading. What do you say? Now, as I've often mentioned, man, tell you, my throat is clogged today. As I have often mentioned, I am a big fan of the Capcom versus SNK art style that Capcom employed. And one of the reasons for that is the hard lines and also the overhead light sourcing. Now, I am no expert pixel artist by any stretch of the imagination. I am still very much learning as I go. So what I like to try and do is just experiment a little bit along the way. And my light source is partially overhead and partially behind the character. And of course, in order to give depth, you kind of have to just deal with the fact that raised surfaces are going to be lighter, even if it doesn't necessarily make sense for your light sourcing. Okay, we'll darken these guys up just a little bit more right there. There we go. Because see, there's sort of a tug of war happening there with the light sourcing, and this is where having, well, art school, which I don't, talent, which I don't, and a lot of experience, which, well, I do, but not really in pixel art, comes into play. And that tug of war being, we want to convey that that shoulder is popping out, right? So, and the musculature would also be causing that armor to be pressed towards our viewpoint. So in theory, that should be lighter, but at the same time, we're trying to handle our light sourcing, and the light sourcing says that if you've got a raised surface, especially a round one, then it should be darker. So again, that's where the experiment comes into play, and I usually just shade around until I find something that I like the looks of. And I'm trying to also keep consistency with the shading that already existed in this arm. And now that we have the arm in place, let's do some shading on the body. So we'll start out super dark. And then as we get out away from the arm, lighten it up just a little bit. Then a bit of dark to convey some of those round edges around the armor, around the body, I mean. Some here too. Okay, and thus far, not too shabby. We'll shade around the belt. I generally always go maximum dark around the belt to convey the squeeze. Then we'll add a little bit around here to kind of do the outline of the musculature. So you should have some abs peeking up through there. Then a little bit back here. And now we're just going for general texture. May have gone a little too far with that, so let's lighten that back up a little bit. Round it off some. And that's not too bad, and you're not going to see most of it anyway, because again, this is all going to be covered with a tabard. And now he needs a head, so we'll grab a head that's at a similar angle and just rotate it and paste it on there and then make some adjustments. So look how that matches with, well, it's a rough match. Yeah, I can live with that. Except the collar should cover just a little bit more space here. All right, next step, we move right on to the legs. Okay. Actually, I'm going to start with the light color. Okay, once we do a roughing, then I go and smooth the lines so that I have a nice 1 pixel outline. Again, those of you out there who are more experienced in this than I am, if there is a quicker way to do this, I am all ears. I am very much an amateur when it comes to sprite creation. I'm only doing this so I can have a hard outline, grab my paint bucket. There we go. And then we'll start on the boots. Most of the time I do the hard outline of the boots, but In this particular pose, we'll assume that the clothing is kind of bunching around the sleeve of the boot for the most part. Roughly about 15 pixels or so. Something about like that. I'm going to put something in chat here just to make sure. There. Actually, I could do that closer to the edge, couldn't I? Yeah, if my light source is overhead, then definitely could lighten that up. Whoa, made those legs a little too long, didn't I? No problem. That'll about take care of it. What about the boots? Are they a little too long? Yeah, just a touch. Okay, well, we'll slack those up a little bit too, just by a pixel. There we go. Okay, did kind of a rounded. Cloth was bunched up towards the rear of the legs, so we'll do something similar. Right about there, roughly. Okay, except we're going to have to go a little bit deeper on the color, I think. So that was, and then the heavy shade, okay. See, the difference here is that we had the advantage of 3 colors to use because we had really dark, being that it was on the bottom, and that gave us another slightly lighter color we could use for that little clothing outline, and then even lighter for the shade, and then lighter still for an anti-aliasing color before finally the highlight color. But over here, since I started out very light to begin with because of the light sourcing, that means that I don't have quite as many shades to work with, so I don't have anything to break that outline up with. Let's see what that's about. All right, I think that works okay. Now I'll add some shading to the boot. It's not a phone, it's a leash. Yeah, okay. Now, let's see. Let's put his other leg in there. I think that would be a good idea. I mean, it would work with just this. You're only seeing this animation for about 10 centiseconds, or this frame for about 10 centiseconds. And if we wanted to make it absolutely just flat 2D, then we could get away with it. But I don't like that. I complain all the dang time about how sprite artists in games tend to be lazy and just reuse stuff. And so if I'm gonna run my mouth, I better back it up, right? There goes my supervisor back there. She's a big help. Okay, we want to convey that this leg is a little farther away, so it's going to get a slightly darker tone. Oh yes, yes, I know it's awful back there. Okay, and then we see another problem. When I add the shading in there, it's going to completely destroy the outline of that leg. So we need to go just a little bit darker on the right leg. Where is the leg layer? There's the leg lift, there's the right arm. Head, oh, there's where I screwed up. I was looking for the leg layer and I couldn't find it, and turns out that I accidentally just started drawing without switching to the new leg layer. It's part of his head. That makes a lot of sense, right? No problem. We can just clip it. Edit, paste special, paste into place. This is his leg right, which is under the, or should be over the leg left. Now, as I was saying, I need to make the outline of the right leg a little darker so that it will stand out against the left leg. Now let's try that again. We'll go back to the left leg. Rid of that there. Give just a little bit of a dark shade in that spot. Give it some outline. There we go. And I think that gives it just a little bit of depth, and I will probably want to do that with the arm too. Actually, come to think of it, the arm is way, way, way too low on his body. So let's see if we can adjust that. There we go. And the whole thing is just a little too low. Once we made that adjustment, we need to fix the shading on the body accordingly. Yeah, we can mark with that. All right, so the next step is to start adding a tabard. I'm going to check and make sure this is streaming correctly. Yep, okay. Okay, whenever I start drawing the tabard, what I usually do is I just pick a spot close to the center of his belt and just start drawing the inner seam. Like anything else, I just start with a rough outline and then I go back and smooth it over. Where's the break? Oh, there it is. Derp. There is a pixel. There. Oh, there it is. Or not. That's a little frustrating. Fine, we'll just fill it in the fill it in this far with a pencil. Might as well. By the time I found the break point, I could have just filled it in by hand. Okay, now on anti-aliasing. Oh, thank you, sir. I appreciate the birthday message. All right. And now let's work on some of the, this wouldn't be quite as dark through here, so. And then as we get closer up to the belt, it would be really dark. And then also underneath his arm. Minor reprieve in the darkness right there. Okay, now we'll put his arm back. And the next thing is a little trick that I like to do is I will actually shade the armor, only it's on the tabard layer. Because obviously that fabric would create a shadow on the armor underneath. So what this lets me do is if I'm working on a sprite that won't have the tabard, well, you can see then it actually changes the armor shade. So simple enough. Now we need to get the bottom portion of the tabard. And just like before, I just find a point roughly along the belt line, and I start freewheeling it. Now the outline is 2 pixels thick to show the trim at the bottom of the tabard tail. Everywhere else, of course, it remains 1 pixel. And to give it kind of a curl, we draw the far side and use a darker color to convey that. So now we add the anti-aliasing color. Since this is exposed to the light, it's going to be the brightest. Then we tone it down right about there. Then we do the same thing on the far side. We just do it in a slightly different shade. So we see on this side, it's our second darkest shade, then one up, then one up. Here we start with our darkest shade, then one up, then one up to convey the distance. Now again, I am very much an amateur at this. I'm just kind of doing my best. So if there are better artists out there, I'd be more than happy to listen to what you think I should do instead. Try and round that out just a little bit. Oh, there. Okay, we'll see how that goes once I apply the correct palette. The next piece would be his, ooh, that does not work, does it? Yeah, that leg shading is absolutely atrocious when I take another look at it stepping back. So let's go back to it. I think what I'll do is, even though it's not consistent with this position, is I'm going to reverse this. So I'm going to move this curl here down here, and I think it'll actually work a little better because it will let me use a darker shade to bring it in. There we go. Yeah, I think that'll look a lot better. So let's get rid of you. Darken this shading up here. Especially around the boot. And we're just going to remove this outright. There. Yeah, I think that looks a lot better. Before it didn't make a whole lot of sense. So then I'm going to add just a little touch of clothing detail coming off the leg. Or clothing texture, I mean. that's nothing I need to worry about. Oh, that sticks out too much. Lighten it up. That's better. Okay. The devil is in the details. At least I think so. Now we can add the cape. Oh, spam. New layer. Cape. Looks like how our motion should go. Okay, so it should sort of be starting to pull over his head. That's roughly where I think it will be. Then we'll grab some green. Fill it in and get to shading. Oops. Boy, I got that completely backwards, didn't I? What in the world was I? It'd just be simpler if I just delete it. Layer. Told you I was an amateur. Roughly the length of the collar to the belt if it were stretched out. And at least in my case, that's not an exact science. Check on the form real quick here. Oh, goodness gracious. Said you don't kill bosses. Steven, tried several times, nothing. Okay, we'll have to check that out. Particularly, okay. Now the cape gets a little trickier, and here's why. So you can see with the with the tabard, it's just one big piece, right? And so we can draw the curl in it, and it works, and it's no big deal. As long as I get the colors right, you can see the depth, and it'll show up a lot better when I actually apply the correct palette. The cape, though, is in two pieces, so it's a little hard to draw that curl and then also draw the curl from the other side of the cape and have it convey proper depth and not just be kind of a jumbled up mess of pixels and colors. So I'm going to try and just do a conventional little curl here on the right side of the cape, and then we'll see if I can get the left. And again, hopefully it won't be too much of a mess. So we're going to get that dark green outline. Kind of do the same thing we did with the tavern. Use the middle shade. And then we'll use our second to last color as kind of a, oops, actually, I hadn't used the brightest, so the brightest goes along the edge. And then this acts as just kind of an outline breaking color, or I like to call it an anti-aliasing color. And then over here we do the opposite, so we use the second brightest shade for our highlight. Then we use the middle shade as sort of our anti-aliasing, and then the bottom shade as our fill-in. And then we're going to try and get a little bit of color depth here. Oops, actually I'll need the maximum highlight for this. We use the maximum highlight for the area around the top. Then we'll gradually seek it down. And then of course we do the exact, not the opposite, but we do the same thing over here. We just start at a lower shade. So we start slightly lower. But I can't let these two colors, I can't let those two touch each other, because if they do, then you lose the separation. And now we'll do the other half of the cape. Hindsight being what it is, I probably should have picked colors that contrast a little bit more than this green. See, that just doesn't work. There's a conflict there because the trim from the piece of the cape behind just blends right in here, and there's no separation at all. So what we'll do is we'll just assume, since the other piece of the cape is behind, we'll treat it as behind. And I'll give it a slightly upshaded little bit right here. And we'll just assume that the rest of the capes, since that is on the far side, is hidden by the right side of the cape. And I think that does work. So the next step is we need to add the pauldron strap. And we're almost done. And then I'm going to deal with a message on the forum. I don't mean to be I don't mean to be hostile, guys, especially since, this is on live chat, but I can already tell from the message. I'm going to make this very clear to anybody out there. It's fine if you want to make requests for the engine and all that, but if you don't actually understand how something works and you're going to come along and say, hey, you need to add this such and such, and that functionality is already there, and we try to explain to you how it can be done, and or you are asking for that feature from a standpoint of just not really understanding how to properly produce something, and we also try to explain that, and then you tell us we don't know what we're talking about, you're not going to get a very friendly reception. So I'm going to have to take care of that in a few minutes, but first let me finish up my work here, one thing at a time. Pauldron is just like the belt. I try to keep it about 3 pixels wide. And then it follows the body. Try to contour it to some degree. And then also just like the body, we add just a little bit of shading to give it a highlight, or not a highlight, but to give it some raised texture. And that's really all there is to it. With the pauldron, or with the belt straps, like on the pauldron and this belt, as you can see, I really don't follow the proper rules for light sourcing. That belt really isn't farther out at any particular point. I've just found that adding a little highlight there, especially when the proper color is in, gives it just a little bit of brown highlight there and gives it that leather texture that I'm after. Again, I'm an amateur at this, so if somebody can explain a better way to do it, then I am all ears. And one last thing I want to do is add a second arm. Oops. Arm left. It's going to go underneath the head. That helps a bit. Might want to darken that up a little bit, even though it violates shadowing rules, just to give it some separation, but I'll leave it alone for now. And now we need to grab his sword. What we do for the sword here is, since he's springing basically on the sword laid flat, so in other words, if use this glass here so it would make more sense. So if the sword was the glass, it'd be turned away from you like this. So basically the pommel is head on into the screen. And I'm going to layer it in such a way that if all I have to do when I want to disarm him is just remove the pommel. So that means I'm going to draw his glove into the sword itself. So I'll draw this guard, or undraw the guard around so you can see his fingers curling around it, but where his fingers are not, then we go ahead and put the guard in place. And let's scoot it up just a little bit. There, just enough that it covers those fingers down there. And then invert the shading. Didn't mean to do that. Of course, a lot of this is going to be covered up by the flags when I draw those in anyway. Let me just kind of loosely draw the flags in. And yeah, I'll be the first person to admit, those flags kind of help cover up how difficult it is, for me at least, to draw a proper pommel from an edge-on view. So the flags serve kind of a dual purpose. They give the sword a little something extra, and although that's not why I put them there, they also just kind of help cover up my art mistakes. Okay. The last thing that he needs is the sheath. Layer, new layer, sheath, front. Which all that really is just the belt that would have held it in place. Which attaches at the buckle. Just kind of flows around right there. And we'll also give it a little bit of a highlight. And then the sheath back, we can just steal from something else. And then again, the devil's in the details. So let's change that highlighting just a little bit because it is facing the sun. And we'll make it stick out just a little bit past the belt there. Just the tiniest little bit. Okay, I think Mr. Yan is ready for prime time with his new sprite. So let's save this and let's convert it to a video. So as I explained before, when you want to export an animation, you can tell it you want to render for video, assuming that you have everything set here to 1 second. Okay, it is a backhand spring is what I want to use with an underscore. Select folder, production exports, render, replace, because I do want to replace the ones that are there. Then we'll use Plumbo's awesome tool. The input directory is Valis Production Exports, open. The output directory is also Valis Production Exports. The palette, however, we go to Quest of Quien, data, characters, Valis, and we will use his base palette, which has the color separation. Convert, yes to all, and those sprites are ready. So let's go over here and we'll actually open that up. Let's see, documents, it is in my Git repos, Quest of Quien, work files, Valis Production Exports, and there's our backhand spring files. We'll grab them. I'm going to open up another folder, or tab, I mean, Quest of Quien, data, cares, and you can see all the stuff here where I've been using a test module to start building this. The tabard folder, paste it in there. Yes, we want to replace the files in the destination, and let's have a look at it in ChronoCrash Modders Tools. Reload sprites and see what we get. And the Karate Man is no longer filling in for all the sprites, just one now. So there's the animation, and just for fun, even though the animation is not complete, I need to do the sequencing to actually get the hops and to take care of the actual spacing that you would get when he's landing. So let's take a quick look. You know, again, right there when he's landing, so when he springs back, I need to move him several pixels backwards because, you know, it looks like he just slid forward, and I can't stand that sort of thing. But as far as the sprite goes, I think that it's going to work. So there's what it looks like when it is in proper color. And there you have it. There is one more sprite for the character Valis Yon, who is one of several that will be going into a project named Quests of Quien. It is an all-original IP by yours truly. Now I have to actually get back to my regular job, and I'm going to check some things out on the forum. Guys, thanks for watching, any of you who have followed along. And if you want to see more, please like, please subscribe. I know you get sick of hearing that, but it really does help support the algorithms. And the more of this that I can do through that support, the less I have to do my other occupations, and I have more time to help you all out. Anyway, thanks, and we will see you next time.